And it's a evolving crisis, isn't it, at the moment? And we find that from one day to another, the crisis deepens, and prices change. They're not going up at the moment. They're continuing to go down. They're not going down. They're going upwards at the moment. For the first time yesterday, I presented a price to a client where the actual unit rate was over £1 a unit, which is very, incredibly scary and not sustainable. Because eventually it will put out, people will not be able to afford to pay the price of what they're using. So and that puts other risks into the energy market as well, because when the energy suppliers consider future demand and future supply levels, they're also factoring in future people, the future of people being able to pay the bills that they're presenting to them, which is again is a very scary position to be in. So the aim of today's presentation is an introduction. It'll be a short introduction, virtual energy and the why, because I think it's always important that we have the why. Energy pricing crisis, what crisis, and then the future. What future is it, I hear you ask? So virtual energy, and I found this slide a couple of years ago while I was doing my preparation for this, and I thought it was a really interesting slide, and I'd forgotten that I'd had it made, because it essentially says what virtual energy does, really, in a presentation of the logo, and as you can see there, so when the time comes to renew the energy contracts, and as the leaves fall off the tree, the imagery falls away, we're there to nurture and grow and reintroduce the new contracts back into the clients. Says complicated. So the why. Virtual energy was born out of necessity, because I needed to work. I was made redundant, and my why is I will never have anybody have that power over me again. I know I've explained this to a number of the audience before. The second one here is I remember that although I was made redundant, I am really good at what I do. And also within that, and I never put it down, I actually love what I do. And the third one, which is probably the most important thing there, is that I have a mortgage to pay each month, because without the roof over my head, I don't have an office. So in the 12th of March 2014, the birth of Birchwood Energy Limited. So we've been trading now 8 years, sorry. So we're going, and it's doing all right, isn't it? We're still here, and gaining client base and often losing some clients, but that's a natural sort of history. That's a natural sort of evolution of any business. I've always believed it as the fact that if you lose a client for whatever reason, learn by it, but make sure you replace them. So today's focus is on energy prices, and as you can see from the slide here, this focus is mainly on prices going ahead through the winter period. And you can see from last August 2021 where prices were below 100 pounds per megawatt, to the 2nd of August where they're over 700 pounds per megawatt of electricity, and you can see that this year energy prices are on the increase, with the winter 22 base load is still below the winter peak, and 2023 is anticipated to be lower. Well, it's anticipated to be lower at the moment. So, factors influencing the current energy crisis. There is a lovely graph, picture there that I picked out about the energy crisis, and lots of reasons that are influencing the current pricing of energy, from failure of supply, electricity prices, emergency supplies, the production of electricity, and we can work our way around that spider graph there, spider illustration, and pick out many, and we'll go through those in a minute. But I thought there was some interesting facts that have come out that from 2004 to 2022, electricity prices risen 460%. Gas has risen 284%. We also have the meeting of the 2008 Climate Change Act and the associated financial impacts via taxes on the electricity and gas prices. And the 21, and an interesting fact that the 21% of the UK's total CO2 emissions comes via the energy sector. So in essence, the energy sector has to find ways to meet the 2008 Climate Change Act by reducing its CO2 emissions by 21%. Now that means internal investment into how they produce their energy and how they get rid of some of the carbon CO2, either by offsetting or whatever. But that when we talk to supply, when you hear the political rhetoric about windfall taxes and that sort of stuff, what they don't actually say, remember to impact on that, is the fact that the suppliers are going to have to self-fund the CO2, reducing their CO2 emissions by to meet the 2008 Climate Change Act. So whilst we take away a lot of the profits of the energy suppliers, how are we going to meet the above act in the future? This is not a political stance. This is just where we are, and any political political views expressed by me are my own. Winter 2022 and 23, and why we are here. So why are we here at the moment? So there are unprecedented risks within the energy market at the moment, from the global impact of COVID-19 and the financial and impact that it had and is having on the global economy. As we've come out of COVID-19 and all the restrictions and the closing downs and everything that happened, the demand on energy within or around the world has increased significantly, and placed unrealistic demands upon the production of electricity, gas. The invasion of Ukraine has a huge effect on global prices of gas, mainly due to the, as we touched on, the invasion of Ukraine's and the Nord Stream 1's supply of gas into Europe. And as Lorna kindly indicated, the fact that I think it's 80% of gas into via, I understand that 80% of gas supplied via Nord Stream 1 goes into the European countries like Germany, Italy, and they've become heavily reliant on their energy, their electricity production by gas-fired generation. And the problem with that is that, and this has been borne out of political decisions made by the governments in Europe, like Germany, which made under the Merkel premiership or presidency or whatever she was, I can't remember, but she decided, the government at that time decided to come away from nuclear power and started to close down a lot of the nuclear power stations, and convert them into gas-fired power stations, which they then became heavily reliant on the import of gas through Russia, which has been great for them, and it has helped them meet some of their climate change targets, but the long-term effects of now becoming more because the fact that the sole reliance on Russian gas has put them in the crisis that they are in at the moment, and so much so that they're now making that uncomfortable political U-turn and re-looking at the closure of the nuclear power stations in Germany, which is, and as we know, the green lobby within Germany is huge and is causing them uncomfortable positions to sit in particularly in their government, and uncomfortable discussions surrounding this. But the green lobby, who are very powerful in Germany, are not in a position to argue against it when they can see that the energy prices are causing the crisis within their own economy as well. The unpredictable winter season is always going to play a heavy effect on future pricing of electricity and gas, because obviously we don't know how cold or warm the winter season is going to be. So what the energy suppliers try to do is store gas in advance of the winter period. Now, last year the prices rose towards the end of the season because of low storage levels within the UK, and that was predominantly influenced by the fact that during the summer last year, wind generation and solar generation, ironically, was quite low, so they used a lot of their storage of gas during the summer to produce electricity. This year has been the same, but there has also been the added problem with China, in that China, who have closed importing. They recently closed in. About a year ago, sorry, they closed importing of coal from Australia because they wanted to concentrate on their stocks and that sort of stuff. So the knock-on effect was that Australia decided to freeze their LNG exports to China, which has had a massive effect in the fact that China is now predicting low storage levels during their winter season. And as we know, China is one of the biggest users of electricity in the world, and their CO2 emissions are huge because of their continuing use of fossil fuels for generation of electricity. So they've now reopened their markets, or they're trying to reopen their markets, and they've started talking again to Australia about the import of coal. But it's a little bit too late, and their storage levels will not meet their expected usage. So they're going to be looking at the import of LNG to bring up their storage levels, which will then have the knock-on effect of this is, of course, is that the LNG, which is the liquid natural gas, which floats around the world in these huge tankers, will be short in supply to the European bases which need it as well. So that'll bring in tight supply periods over the winter periods. And I know that there has been some discussion and leaking of policies about Europe, the UK's supply strategy over the winter and possible blackouts. And I know that we understand that there are talks ongoing at the moment, and there probably always is every year, but I think these have been heightened at the moment, where they're looking at the policies around supply of UK electricity, and at what points and to who they could cut supplies to ensure that we do have some sort of supply within the UK at major times. So and as I said, touched on earlier, the high prices of gas will continue to cause supply issues around the world. This is incredibly, and I apologize for talking at you, and I know it's death by PowerPoint in many respects. So again, we go back to, I've touched on this now, what is driving factors behind the increase is obviously the Russian supplies through Nord Stream 1, and that Russia has reduced its supplies through Nord Stream 1, which is the main pipeline into Europe. There is another pipeline, but they have not had that license yet, which is causing political angst and raises tensions again. So the Russian suppliers have reduced their streams to 20% of what it was before, and they're using the excuse that they need it in their own domestic usage has increased over the last year, so they're having to reduce what they pass outwards. But I think we're all aware that it's a political game that they're playing with reducing supplies, but inflating the cost, causing angst around the world about energy prices, plus deflecting the viewpoint or the current situation in the Ukraine. Again, we touched on low storage levels across the world and the recovery post COVID-19, and with all the above adds risk into supply. So where there is risk, it always breeds volatility. So in the marketplace, this is why we're seeing this constant upping and downing of energy prices over the last 12 months. European energy policies, again, we've touched on that, and energy prices, and this is an interesting one really, that energy prices meets the climate crisis, and which one is going to prioritize. I think that's an interesting and untouched sort of discussion point at the moment, in the fact that we have the crisis within the energy world, but we also have a crisis within the climate, and those two sort of butt heads against each other, because within the energy prices we pay for the climate crisis. So and I'll touch on this in a minute, but is there a call now for the climate crisis levies to be taken away for a short period to ease the pressures on prices? The solution, I don't know the solution. I sit here as an energy consultant selling gas and electricity contracts to clients. And there are many political answers out there which are not easy. Short-term reduce VAT, takes VAT away. They're talking about the 5% VAT. Again, the 5% VAT mainly affects the domestic usage. Also, it so that would help people within their own households to alleviate tax on their household and gain that money back. I think and green taxes. The green taxes, like the climate levy charge, the FIT rate, which is the feed-in tariff, renewables obligations, and various other taxes, all are hidden within the energy cost. And these taken away may give 150, 160 pound per year back to those users. But again, it would be a short-term gain, because those taxes have been committed to by the government to fund green energy subsidies and that sort of stuff. So they would have to find that income stream from somewhere else, and it would probably come out of other taxes within your revenue. I don't know. It would they would have to find those, or kick the can down the road a little bit, so that they have to inflate those taxes at some later stage. Longer term alternative energy production, I think that is the key, and I know the world is looking into that. I think there has to be less reliance on Russian gas. I think the lesson has been awkwardly learnt by everybody that we cannot rely on Russian gas for our energy generation, and there needs to be a more strategic procurement plan for businesses. They need to take. I mean, I was looking at presentations I was making 2 years ago, and towards the end of the presentation, I was, I'm not a mind reader. I'm not here I can't forecast the future. I just go on trends. But I was forecasting at that time that energy prices would continue to rise, and that if people have the opportunity to secure long-term energy contracts, they should be doing that. That's fair enough, isn't it? If you secure, but at the end of that energy contract, you're going to find it's going to come to an end and the price is going to rise anyway. But we need to, and that goes back to the long-term reliance and to for us all to find some sort of cheaper energy solution within the household. So this is where I've got to at the moment.